Hello, BookTube. I don't imagine there are any of you left standing after that last 30-minute mega video, but just in case, just if I have to bat cleanup, I thought I'd make another video. This time a page 112 tag, which I really like, that's derived from a French literary prize in which the judges are given page 112 of the prospective works, under the assumption that it's only once you get that far into a book that you start to see the parts of it that haven't been prettied up, and by constantly being gone over by the author, the editor, and whatever. And maybe that makes it a better thing to judge the book by. And the booktuber Sean the Bookmaniac adapted that prize into sort of an all-purpose tag-like thing to do on BookTube, in which you pick 3 books, go to page 112, read it, and then discuss what that page alone tells you about the book. And as Sean correctly pointed out, the most accurate way to duplicate the tag is to have somebody else send you, blind, 3 page 112s, and then in a separate email the identifying books, so that you don't know what they are when you read them on camera. You open that last email last in order to see what they are. Sean's done that to me. I just recently did that to him. I sent him 3 excerpts and 3 books. But he's not going to do it, I guess, because he hates me, because I smell. But I wanted to do it myself today, even though it's not a pure version, because I know what the books are. And I'm going to do a non-fiction version. So, yeah. First you get a 30-minute rant-a-file video, and then you get a ton of non-fiction. We'll do the first one here. Let's see here. In 1896, a photographer paused to capture a South Natick landscape. A child posed in the foreground, not far from the Elliott oak, that tree so famous in Yankee mines. In the background, water flowed near a dam on its way downriver to Boston Harbor. The photographer could not have anticipated that in the 20th century that same spot would be the key stop on decolonizing journeys. Throughout east-central Massachusetts, place meetings continue to morph despite attempts to freeze them for posterity, one carefully composed frame at a time. The oak was a fragile thing on which to pin memories anyway. Underground gas line construction in the 1930s killed its root system, and the tree had to be taken down, a casualty of so-called progress. The built environment proved hardly more stable than the organic one. Natick's post office mural deteriorated as a leaky roof made the paint yellow and flake off. The Natick Historical Commission lobbied the U.S. Postmaster General for help, and a conservation firm completed stabilizing restorations in 2007. Historical Commission member Maureen Sullivan described the rationale behind this preservation, and this is her quote. The mural could have been a farm scene, the Great Fire of 1874. It could have been the world's largest shoe, which was made in Natick. It could have been anything. But Hollis Holbrook chose a dark time in Natick's history, a time that was changing it from a praying Indian village to a regular town. It's important that that be preserved. We care about our history and how it is preserved and how it is presented. Historical Commission Chair Stephen Evers affirmed the values of maintaining this mural and countering public history tendencies to erase or downplay the war's landscapes. And in addition to everything else, you get the picture. You get the photograph that the author is talking about. As you can tell from that excerpt, this is a granular study. It's a highly detailed history the author has gone and found. The author isn't content just to talk about the history of Natick as glimpsed in that photograph. The author has then gone on to find the people who are currently running the town and interview them. So it gives you an idea that the book is probably going to stitch together the past and the present. That unless this is an isolated incident, that's probably the case. If you had to just pick that page at random, you might think that. Then we'll move on to the next one. Let's say your kitchen stove has caught fire and you can't put it out. Now the flames are licking the walls and the ceiling. You call the fire department, but instead of sending a team to put out the blaze, the person who answers the phone either says, "Are you sure? Have you studied it enough?" or says, "Not our responsibility, try the police or City Hall." Alternatively, they might say, "Thanks for letting us know, but we're too occupied with the upcoming election to help you. Good luck." Looking back on the history of epidemics over the ages, and especially over the last 100 years, It's screamingly obvious that every minute matters in responding to an outbreak. Dithering and denial on the part of those who should be protecting us kill people, sometimes in devastating numbers. If a new deadly pandemic exploded today, would leaders continue to argue, deny, and defer while the deaths mounted? Would they persist with their plodding, piecemeal approach? Or would they put the needs of humanity first and refuse to let anything get in their way? Just as real firefighters understand that responding to an alarm within 5 minutes is crucial in preventing a house or even a neighborhood from being engulfed by flames, the most effective leaders understand that rapid response makes all the difference between life and death. Right away, you see a difference between that and the previous excerpt. This is much more vividly written. And you can tell from this excerpt that it's about pandemics, which is an inherently more dramatic subject than historical preservation in the town of Natick. But even so, even allowing for that, when you think about this passage in conjunction with the last one, you see how some of it is the inherent drama of the subject, but a lot of it is the choices made by the author. And once you read the second excerpt, you can clearly see ways in which the author of the first excerpt could have increased the dramatic payload of the passage. It's clear in both cases that we're dealing with authors who really know what they're doing, so it's clear that the author of the first passage didn't want to do that. But you see the difference right away, is that the second excerpt is, I hate to say it because it sounds so horrible, but it's going to be easier to read. A book that's written like that is going to be easier to read. And then we'll do the third one here. If one takes a bee from the same hive as the guard bee, doses her with odor from another hive, and then reintroduces her back into her own hive, the guard bees react as if the manipulated bee smells of smoke and booze, or worse, as if she is an alien from another hive. The guard's reaction to the offending olfactory message, however, is a bit more extreme than ours would be to the stench of a barfly. The guard bees kill the messenger because of the olfactory message she now carries. When it comes to mate choice and these types of environmentally acquired odors, one main message is that if you smell like me, you must be like me. That is good when looking for the same species, or, as we will soon see, not so good when looking for someone with different genes. Odors can also reveal with whom we have been hanging out, and the consequence here can be harsh. Many relationship has been derailed by a man returning home to his partner bearing the scent of another woman. As I will discuss below, most women who wear perfume have a specific scent that they feel is them, so to speak. So when a philandering man returns home, the details of the alien scent does not matter, just the message that it is alien. But there might be details of a cheating devil in the scent's bouquet. Glendale.com, a dating site that arranges illicit affairs, reported the top 10 perfumes used by cheating men and women. If her man returns not only with a foreign perfume, but specifically with the scent of Guerlain's Shalimar, Coco Chanel's Mademoiselle, or Givenchy's Very Irresistible, it might be time to get counseling. Animals don't get counseling. They go right to the point. Female redback salamanders have low tolerance for a philandering mate. These small amphibians are common under rocks, logs, and mosses in forests of northeastern North America. They are ideal animals for behavior and ecology experiments, as they are perfectly content living in small terrariums. Experimenters at Southwestern Louisiana University documented the consequences of a male salamander going astray. Pairs of salamanders were maintained in separate terrariums, mimicking what we might think of as marital bliss. I'm sure I'm not the only person thinking of Gussie Finknottle right now. But then the researchers interceded, planting doubts about the male's fidelity in the mind of his mate. They removed the male and placed him in another terrarium for a short time before returning him to his partner. If he had been placed in an empty terrarium, his return home was uneventful. But if he had visited a terrarium with another female, he had hell to pay. Even though the female was his size, she grabbed him mid-body with her jaws and body-slammed him onto the ground several times. Lesson learned, although in this case it was the experimenter and not her mate who should have been the target of the female's wrath. Okay, all right, so it appears unintentionally here that we have escalated in readability. Very, very good. Very good stuff in terms of not only liveliness of prose, but dissemination of scientific information. You could read that all day long, and it's a perfect example of why I tell people that who don't read nonfiction that you literally don't know what you're missing. It's not anything like what you think. And that excerpt, our third one, we'll go in reverse order. That third one is A Taste for the Beautiful, The Evolution of Attraction. And it's by Michael Ryan, who is the Clark Hubbs Regent Professor of Zoology at the University of Texas. That is our author. Faced with the prospect of reading a whole book like that, I don't think many people would turn it down. Then the middle one, the one that was about diseases, is indeed that. It's a history of epidemics. It's the end of epidemics. The subtitle is The Looming Threat to Humanity and How to Stop It by Jonathan Quick and Bronwyn Fryer. And don't let the title fool you. The end of epidemics is, this is not about epidemics coming to a natural end. There's a lot of preventative stuff in here, but you can tell from the cover that the book is about how dangerous epidemics are now and how humanity teeters on the brink of mega epidemics all the time, and that it's only a matter of time until one of them succeeds in becoming a major health problem. And hence the alarmed, and prescriptive tone of the excerpt that we read, which is, are we ready? Not necessarily with medical treatment, but with social mobilization. Are we ready? Or would it just be a case where, well, I don't think we are ready in terms of medicine or social mobilization or even education. I don't think we are ready. And that's bad. Right now, the United States is in the middle of an epidemic. And it's only barely started to make the news. 30 people have died. Most of them have been children. It's the flu. It's a strain of influenza that is the major reason that it's an epidemic. It's almost all of the United States. It's everywhere except Hawaii and I think parts of the District of Columbia. Everywhere else in the country is up to their eyeballs in flu cases. And part of the reason why it's such an epidemic is because this particular strain of the flu adapts immediately to treatment. The anti-flu medicine that was ready to go to pharmacies and hospitals at the beginning of this flu season is already mostly obsolete. The virus has already changed. Flu viruses, like viruses, can, in addition to changing on their own and adapting to their environment, they can also talk to each other. So, whereas, a normal organism, viruses are sort of quasi-living. They aren't normal organisms. They're the most fascinating form of, I don't even want to call them life on Earth, but most organisms on Earth, in order to gain new genetic information, have to go through some form of procreation. But viruses can transfer genetic information on touch. And as a result, you get 6 different people who are sick at the same time in the same emergency room, and you're at the end of that day, you're going to have a strain of the influenza virus that's totally immune to anything those people have been given, and that's the case. And the only reason that the story is being minimized is because it's the flu, and this particular strain of the flu, despite the fact that it's killed people, when it strikes an adult, this particular strain of the flu is virtually indistinguishable from a bad cold and doesn't even, in most cases, include a component of nausea. Nausea is what causes humans to panic. And if you have a flu that doesn't have that, that just makes you feel tired and miserable and weak and achy, then you tend not to be alarmed. You tend to just pamper yourself. And the note about it that I always want newscasters or people that I talk to notice isn't the comparative mildness of this particular strain of flu. It's how widespread it is. We aren't ready at all. What if instead of that comparatively mild strain of the flu, it was a comparatively monstrous strain of the flu, where you had internal bleeding and tons of nausea? It's not like the parameters of infection would be any different. The disease would just be different. That's all. But the parameters of infection point right at our public education, our dissemination of scientific information, the adaptability of human communities to immunological procedures, That's what's at fault here, not the fact that this particular strain of flu is relatively bearable, and it's all over the country. The whole country is there's a widespread epidemic. Take that, go online and look at a Google image search for flu 2017, and you will see the entire United States is red. It's entirely covered in, in flu. Now picture if that were some other disease, some really serious disease. The mortality rates would be unbelievable. It'd be through the roof. So anyway, a long digression to say this is a really good book. It's really good, and you can tell from the writing that it's very engaged. And then the first one, which is the problem child of this batch, very good, very meaty, very thoughtful, but tougher to go through. In other words, serious history. You get the impression that it's serious history, and you are right. It is one of the 2 new books this season on King Philip's War. There's a colonists versus Indians war that was savage by the standards of its day here in New England, in my own New England. And the book is called Memory Lands, and it's by Christine DeLucia. And there's a wonderful passage here. There's nothing in this world as invisible as a monument. Robert Musil, the author of A Man Without Qualities, contended in 1927. Anything that constitutes the walls of our life, the backdrop of our consciousness, forfeits its capacity to play a role in that consciousness. And this is, the book studies the places of King Philip's War and comes to that same conclusion, that the savagery of the war and the places where massacres took place and battles took place has largely been subsumed by just the normal life of New England. But Memory Lands is great. The other one is Our Beloved King. That's the other King Philip's War book. Our Beloved King is a straightforward narrative history of King Philip's War, and Memory Lands is more of it's still got all the history of King Philip's War, but it's more of a meditation on history and memory and landscape and whatnot. And you can tell that even from the excerpt that we read, which wasn't specifically about the war. It was about, one tree and one post office mural in one small town in Massachusetts. But that, like I pointed out when we were talking about that excerpt, that ethos carries throughout the book. That is what the author does. She links the past with the present in those kinds of ruminative ways, so that you'd almost have to call this not history for beginners. The other King Philip's War, you could just pick up and read and learn about King Philip's War. This, I would think, you would probably have to be a little more practiced at reading history to really love this. And I think you could tell that from the essay, from the excerpt that we did. So we have Memory Lands, we have The End of Epidemics, and we have A Taste for the Beautiful. And that is our page 112 tag today. And feel free, any of you who don't hate me quite as much as Sean does, to send me your page 112s. I love it when this tag is blind, although I love talking about the nitty-gritty of the writing anyway, even when I know the books. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.